Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring, well, some pretty big topics. Happiness, compassion, and the idea that we can actually train our minds to get more of both. Our main source is The Art of Happiness. It's that fascinating book where the Dalai Lama shares his thoughts in conversation with psychiatrist Howard Cutler. So you get this mix of Eastern philosophy and Western science.
Exactly. And that blend is what makes it so valuable, I think. You've got the Dalai Lama's insights, his experiences, but then also Cutler's perspective from psychiatry. It lets us look at these ideas from different angles, giving a much richer picture.
Right. And our listener, the learner, wants to get to the heart of it quickly, to find those key aha moments, get the useful knowledge without getting bogged down. So our mission today is basically to pull out the core principles and practical tips for living a happier, more compassionate life. A shortcut to getting informed, if you will. Okay, let's jump in. Where's a good place to start with this book?
Well, a huge theme, maybe the central one, is the connection between compassion and happiness. It really underpins everything else. The Dalai Lama stresses this fundamental idea. We're all the same, deep down. Every single person wants to be happy and wants to avoid suffering, recognizing that basic shared humanity is the foundation for compassion.
It's about looking past the surface, isn't it? Realizing the person you disagree with even fundamentally wants the same things you do. And the book says this recognition opens our inner door, which sounds nice, but it leads to real things. Feeling more secure, more trusting, freer inside. Makes sense if you feel connected, you probably feel less threatened, right?
Absolutely. That sense of shared humanity chips away at fear and isolation. The book also really highlights how important self-awareness is here for both compassion and happiness. Understanding your own emotions, your moods, your reactions. That gives you a stable base.
Yeah.
It's hard to genuinely offer compassion if you're kind of a mystery to yourself.
And it's not a one-way street, is it? The compassion-happiness link?
No, not at all. It's reciprocal.
The book shows that, happy people might be more compassionate.
Right.
But also that actively trying to be more compassionate actually makes you happier. It's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. And this isn't just philosophy. The book mentions scientific research supports this. Studies show that acts of kindness, feeling compassion, they trigger positive feelings, improve well-being. Plus, the Buddhist tradition has all these mental trainings, like actual exercises, designed to systematically build up your compassion. Like any skill, really.
You practice it, you get better at it.
Yeah.
Seems logical. And the book even mentions research suggesting happiness is kind of contagious.
Yeah, that it can ripple outwards through social connections.
And acts as an antidote to prejudice. That's powerful. Helps break down those us versus them walls.
And maybe the most provocative idea is that seeking happiness isn't just personal. The book argues it's almost like a duty for others for building a better world. A happier society might be more open, maybe even more democratic.
So happiness isn't just feeling good. It has these ripple effects. Okay, speaking of effects, let's talk about the broader benefits of happiness the book outlines. It goes way beyond just a pleasant feeling.
It really does. The book pulls together research showing happier people tend to do better in, lots of areas. Better relationships, stronger marriages, they're often better parents. And the health links are strong too. Better immune function, lower risk of heart problems, maybe even living longer. Plus, better mental health, more resilience when things get tough.
It's like happiness is a core support for a flourishing life. And here's a huge point for me. The book argues our happiness depends more on our state of mind than our external situation.
That's a big one. It challenges that common idea that if I just get X, Y, or Z, more money, better job, then I'll be happy.
Right.
The book talks about a kind of baseline happiness level. External things affect our mood short term, sure, but we tend to return to this baseline.
Which raises the question, can we change that baseline?
And that's where it gets interesting with genetics versus outlook. There seems to be a genetic influence, yes, but the book really emphasizes that whatever your starting point, you can work with your mind, your attitude, to improve your well-being. Our moment-to-moment happiness often comes down to perspective. How satisfied are we with what we have right now?
So that mental attitude is key. You could have everything externally, wealth, health, but without the right inner state.
It doesn't automatically equal happiness. And conversely, someone with a peaceful mind might find happiness even in difficult circumstances.
It makes you look at societies with lots of material wealth, but also high rates of, dissatisfaction, addiction, things like that.
Exactly. Material progress isn't the whole story. The book also digs into desire. It makes a distinction between healthy desires for happiness, harmony, helping others, and those unreasonable, grasping desires that cause trouble.
It just feeling satisfied in the moment doesn't mean it desires good, right?
Huh.
You have to look longer term.
Precisely. What are the consequences? Does it harm you or others down the line? That's the test.
And in really hard times, like the Dalai Lama losing his homeland, the book notes that connection with others becomes this vital source of worth, of dignity.
A powerful reminder.
It also makes a clear distinction between pleasure and happiness. They're not the same thing.
Right. Pleasure is often fleeting, dependent on external things. Happiness is more internal, more stable. And finding that deeper happiness, the book says, means examining our own minds, understanding what causes lead to which mental states.
Okay, so if happiness is so tied to our mental state, the big question is, can we actually train our minds for it?
And the answer in the book is a definite yes. Inner transformation is possible. It happens by deliberately focusing on positive states and actively challenging the negative ones. This ties into brain plasticity, the idea that our brains physically change based on experience and practice.
Like learning an instrument or a language, our brains aren't fixed.
Exactly. We can shape them. And self-discipline is crucial here, the book says, for breaking out of those negative habits.
Right, you need the discipline to actually do the work.
Absolutely. Applying that discipline to overcome negativity is key for growth. And knowledge helps too. Understanding what really leads to happiness versus suffering, using our intelligence, as the book puts it, to develop a good heart.
That leads nicely into a really interesting part where the book questions some Western assumptions about human nature.
Ah, yes, the idea that we're fundamentally selfish or aggressive.
The book suggests maybe that's not the default.
Right. It proposes looking at infants differently. Maybe they're actually wired to bring joy, to elicit care from others. Things like smiling, responding to faces, these are innate and they trigger nurturing.
It flips the script, doesn't it? Instead of a selfish baby, maybe we start with this seed of compassion that just needs the right environment to grow.
That shift in perspective is huge.
And this relates to overcoming fear too, right? Compassion helps there.
Definitely. The book argues that just recognizing how valuable compassion is the first step to cultivating it. And when you genuinely feel that value, your attitude shifts. You become less fearful of others, more open.
So you start taking the initiative to connect rather than waiting.
Exactly. It's proactive. And it helps with loneliness, too. Instead of just focusing on, say, learning social skills, cultivating genuine compassion can naturally lead to better connections.
The book talks a lot about intimacy and connection, using the Dalai Lama himself as an example of someone who connects easily.
It suggests a basic human fear is separation, and intimacy isn't just physical closeness, it's about sharing your inner self. The book even talks about a broader connectivity with people, nature, the world.
And we often have untapped potential for deeper intimacy in our existing relationships.
Yes, by focusing on our shared humanity, we all want happiness. We all dislike suffering. That's the common ground.
Even a little openness can change everything. Seeing shyness instead of snobbery, for example.
Conversely, anger and self-righteousness, even over small things, just create walls. They destroy peace and connection.
Okay, let's shift to romantic love. That's a complex one.
Very. The book sees it as this mix, cultural ideas, biology, psychology. Romanticism played a big role in emphasizing emotion here. And there's this powerful drive, maybe genetic, to chase that feeling of falling in love, that sense of merging, losing ego boundaries.
Which might connect back to early infant experiences, the book suggests.
Possibly. But it also warns that romantic love alone is a pretty unstable foundation for lasting happiness.
And it distinguishes that from genuine compassion, right? Attachment versus real compassion.
Crucial distinction. Compassion with attachment means you want something back. Genuine compassion is based on recognizing everyone's right to be happy and free from suffering. It's impartial.
Which brings us back to the value of life itself and compassion's role. The book tackles the idea that maybe compassion is just sentimental, especially for people who seem successful.
Yeah, and the Dalai Lama's response points to that deep, innate need for warmth, for affection right from childhood. The book even uses Stalin as a kind of cautionary tale. A life without compassion leads to ruthlessness, suspicion, loneliness, deep unhappiness.
Wow, stark contrast.
And again, science backs up the benefits of compassion and altruism. Better immune function, longer life, more happiness, less depression. The helper's high.
People often report getting more joy from helping others than from, say, buying stuff. The book includes anecdotes like that.
Ultimately, compassion becomes this guide for navigating difficult choices, reminding us of our shared vulnerability.
But life isn't always easy. What about dealing with suffering and loss?
The book suggests reflecting on our suffering nature can actually give perspective on daily troubles. From the Buddhist view, the goal is purifying the mind to end suffering. Loss is painful, obviously. Sadness might fade, but regret can linger, though maybe without the same heaviness over time.
It points out that Western culture sometimes struggles with suffering because we often expect life to be fair and nice.
Right. And when it's not, the tendency can be to see suffering as unnatural, find someone to blame, which just keeps negativity going.
So the advice isn't to just accept suffering passively.
No, definitely seek solutions. But don't fear it, avoid it, reject it. Karma, in this context, isn't fate. It's about taking initiative for positive change. It encourages looking for your own part in things, even when it feels like you're blameless. It fosters understanding, reduces blame.
And acknowledging regret, but not letting it paralyze you.
Exactly. Accepting it without letting it take over.
Another core concept is impermanence. Change. How does that fit in?
It's central to Buddhist thought. Contemplating that everything changes can actually fuel your motivation for spiritual practice. Life changes, relationships change, that's natural.
Relationships have different kinds of closeness, physical, emotional, intellectual, and the balance shifts.
Right. So if you feel you're growing apart, the book suggests not panicking. See it as a natural cycle. Maybe new kinds of intimacy can emerge.
Keeping perspective helps too, right? Knowing others face similar or worse things.
Definitely. And actively trying to see positive angles in negative situations or in people you're angry with, that takes effort, reinforcement. A flexible mind is key for navigating all this change.
The book warns against getting stuck in narrow viewpoints too.
Narrow-mindedness leads to extremes, to problems. Broadening your view through education, learning from other traditions is vital. Recognizing that people have different ways of finding meaning, even in suffering.
Like through faith in a Judeo-Christian context, or using suffering to cultivate compassion in Buddhist practice, like Tonglen.
Right, and distinguishing between physical pain and the suffering our thoughts create about the pain. The mind's role is huge.
Tonglen being that practice of visualizing taking on others' suffering.
And giving them your own happiness and positive qualities, yes. A powerful compassion practice.
Okay, so we have these principles, but putting them into action takes, well, effort. How do we get motivated?
Enthusiasm is key. A strong willingness, even a sense of urgency for change. Using habituation, deliberately building new positive habits is important too.
Managing expectations is probably important, though. It won't happen overnight.
True. Need to be realistic, but hope is essential for making progress, for not giving up.
And what about when negative emotions inevitably pop up? How do we handle those?
The Buddhist view is interesting here. Negative emotions aren't seen as fundamental to the mind. They can be eliminated. Techniques involve using different perspectives, almost like having dialogues with yourself in meditation to challenge negative traits.
Identifying positive states as having a valid basis grounded in reality.
While negative states lack that. And positive emotions act as direct antidotes. Buddhism really accepts the possibility of overcoming afflictions by cultivating things like love, compassion, patience.
Let's tackle anger and hatred specifically.
Yeah.
How does the book suggest conquering those?
First, understanding them. Hatred, it states clearly, is never useful, never positive. And just trying to suppress anger doesn't really work long term.
So what's the alternative?
Actively cultivating the opposites. Patience and tolerance. That takes deliberate effort, enthusiasm, perseverance. Analyzing your anger. Is it appropriate? Is it constructive at all? Usually not.
Practicing inner discipline, restraint.
And sometimes just taking a time out when you feel overwhelmed. Stepping back.
Modern anger research seems to support this too, right? Challenging the thoughts, shifting perspective.
Exactly. Reappraising the situation.
Okay, what about fear and anxiety? They can be so crippling.
The book distinguishes between useful fear, like avoiding danger, and that excessive maladaptive anxiety. The approach is multifaceted. Check for medical causes, look after physical health, but also cultivate compassion and connection.
And sincere motivation helps, like intending no harm.
Yes, that sincerity, whether altruistic or just basic decency, acts as an antidote to fear. Focusing on doing your best, having good intentions, can reduce worry about outcomes too.
How does the book handle self-perception, like self-confidence versus arrogance?
Well, the Buddhist approach tends to tackle negative states directly, rather than getting bogged down in origins. Arrogance is seen as a basic afflicted emotion.
So how do you tell the difference between healthy confidence and arrogance?
Look at the motivation. Is it self-interest, wanting to feel superior? Or is it concern for others, wanting to help? And what are the results? Confidence rooted in genuine care for others tends to lead to positive things. Arrogance usually doesn't.
And self-hatred. That was something the Dalai Lama initially found hard to understand.
Yeah, from a Buddhist perspective, focused on overcoming self-centeredness, the idea of hating oneself seemed foreign, even dangerous, like an unhelpful extreme.
So what's the antidote from that perspective?
Reflecting on Buddha nature, the idea that all beings have this inherent potential for goodness, for perfection, focusing on your positive qualities, your potential, helps build self-worth without tipping into arrogance.
He also notes that maybe culture plays a role in how common self-hatred is.
It seems to suggest that possibility, yeah.
Finally, the book talks about basic spiritual values that go beyond any specific religion.
Right. It encourages respecting all traditions for the ethical guidance they offer. But the essence of spiritual life is defined as inner discipline, cultivating positive mental states like kindness, compassion.
And for people who aren't religious, education is key to promoting these basic human qualities.
Absolutely. Warmth, affection, compassion. These aren't just religious theory, they're practical necessities for well-being.
Virtuous states of mind are the practice. They can't coexist with negativity.
Leading a spiritual life really comes down to having a disciplined, tamed mind reflected in how you act daily. The Dalai Lama's interactions are often used as examples.
That inner discipline involves fighting negative states and cultivating positive ones for a calm, stable mind.
Meditation helps quiet the mind, connect with that deeper nature. There's even meditation on non-conceptuality, trying to grasp the mind's nature directly, beyond ideas, leading to alertness, mindfulness.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot. As we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the biggest takeaways from The Art of Happiness?
I'd say the deep link between compassion and happiness is huge. Also, the idea that the mind is trainable, the power of shifting perspective, and the need for inner discipline on the path to, a more fulfilling life.
And for me, that surprising bit was the Dalai Lama's initial struggle with the concept of self-hatred. It really highlights different cultural starting points, doesn't it?
It really does. And for you, the learner, hoping for those aha moments without feeling swamped, these principles offer things you can actually do, small steps. You don't need a massive overhaul, just consistently practicing a bit more compassion, trying to shift perspective, focusing on common ground. That can start real change.
So here's a final thought to take away from this deep dive. Is genuine happiness something we just uncover inside ourselves, like finding something lost? Or is it more like a skill we have to actively build and practice day by day? Something to think about. Until our next exploration.